This FedGov Today program is sponsored by IBM. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the Navy's audit breakthrough could lead to more audit success. The customer experience edge that's coming from AI, and Phase 3 gets underway for DHS's procurement team. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Department of the Navy has a breakthrough and some challenges ahead on its audit journey. The breakthrough is a clean audit opinion for the Marine Corps. Russell Rumbaugh is Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Financial Management Comptroller. Russ, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. It's been a while, so welcome. The challenge that you have ahead, I see two. One is the Marine Corps maintaining its audit opinion moving forward, and the second is propagating the success the Marine Corps has had across the department. Let's start with that success. What did the Marine Corps do, and how did it get to where it is today?
Well, the first and most important thing the Marines did is leadership. We're now 2 commandants in a row who have emphasized how important the audit is, that it is necessary for warfighting, and that leadership drives so many other things. That's the number one lesson, and I think the Marines getting their opinion have conveyed that to others, and we see more and more people getting on board and recognizing the importance of an audit.
What did you all learn across the department from what the Marine Corps did that can apply to some of the places that has kept the Navy broadly from getting a clean opinion?
Well, now you're getting optimistic that we have learned the lessons department-wide. What we in the Department of the Navy learned from the Marine Corps is the Department of Defense is organized into functional stovepipes. Everybody is very, very good in those. They're doing their best to serve the nation and achieve national security. But by being broken up into those stovepipes, it makes it very difficult to be auditable across. Until we can break down those stovepipes, until we can make trades across, we're going to have a hard time getting an audit opinion for the Department of Defense writ large.
What are the steps that you need to take and that you're taking now inside the Navy to try to break through those stovepipes?
Well, the most important thing is to emphasize, hey, if we can see those stovepipes and they're keeping us from getting an opinion, there's probably other effects that we're suffering from. Namely, we're not getting the most value from our money, we're not being as efficient as we can, and most importantly, direct readiness impacts to the warfighter. And I think that's what people are seeing now. Now we just need to make those trades across organizations where we recognize it's not for the audit, but it's to improve outcomes all around.
So it sounds to me like part of this is functional, tactical maybe is a better word, things that you need to do or change, and part of it is cultural, just conveying the urgency of what this means to the end product, which is preparing the warfighter.
That's absolutely right, and it is the breaking down of that, taking those tactical ones and not running into a, but wait a minute, this is important. Of course it's important. Everything everybody does is important. What we need to do is prioritize so we can have that DoD-wide look.
You wrote recently about audit reform. What did you want to convey in that piece? We'll put a link to it in the notes today at fedgovtoday.com. What did you want people to understand about what you would like to see, and how will it benefit what you just described as the outcome that you're going for?
It is exactly that point. This is a point we made at the Financial Management Summit of the same problem that's keeping us from being auditable. It's what's constraining senior leaders' hands. It's what makes the Secretary of Defense, makes the Deputy Secretary, when they sit in their meetings and try to drive budget change, they don't get an immediate feedback, and it's for the same reasons we can't get to an opinion.
You used a term recently in a video that's posted, and we'll link to that too, called the expense loop. What is the expense loop, and what's its piece in not just audit, but broadly across the FM community in the Navy?
Francis, we believe that is the crucial problem. Anybody who's done anything with business will know about the expense cycle. You have to let your contract, then you have to accept receipt of the goods or the capital asset, then you need to be invoiced for it, and then you need to pay it and finally close out the contract. In the Department of Defense, all of that happens outside of the budgeting systems. Very proud that U.S. Navy, the Department of the Navy, in both Working Capital Fund and General Fund, we are starting our last year of not being in a modern financial system. Everybody will be in a modern financial system. That's a great step forward. But even when we've done that, all of these other things are happening in systems outside of the budgeting system. Many people will know how much we focus on obligations. Obligations aren't money leaving the U.S. Treasuries. Obligations are not actual outcomes. they stop before you find out about that expense cycle. When we tie those two together is when we're going to get that feedback loop that allows senior leaders to do what's best for warfighters.
What do you have to do to get control, right, to get at least get your arms around that concept, both tactically and strategically, Russ?
And that's when it comes to we have to work across communities. Communities who are all working hard to do their best, but until we're working together, when we prioritize each individual as communities, will always be suboptimal. It was hard to see that until we started getting to audit, that started putting everything on the same playing field. The Marines have given us a unique way to look at it because they have gone through and started doing, matching the transactions, doing the nitty-gritty, well below the tactical level. But only in doing that can you expose the strategic choices we need to make.
Does the modern financial management system that you just described and the fact that everybody in the Navy will be working under it mean that you'll now have the underpinning tools that you need to do what you just said the Marine Corps is able to do that maybe the Navy hasn't been able to do until now?
Unfortunately, no. It is a critical step. Right now, in the legacy systems, there's a little bit too much movement. You can change not just the data, which you're supposed to be able to, but you can change the structure. So no independent auditor looks at that and feels comfortable. Only when we get in the modern systems will we lock it in and thus reduce down what the auditors need to look at. So it is a fundamentally crucial step and doesn't even come close to getting us breaking down those stovepipes that we've already talked about.
So what you're getting at there is something that people from the Government Accountability Office have told me in the past about the audit in DOD, what people from the DOD IG's office have said, other financial managers across the department have said. Sometimes it's a matter of a transaction not being correct. Sometimes it's a matter of the auditor not being able to ascertain whether or not the transaction is correct. How much, or do you even have a sense of how much of either of those is the case now as you're making this journey?
There will always be a great deal of both. We're very proud of the Marines and their clean opinion. We got there with what's called a substantive audit. So much work done that we can show the auditors where most of the money is going. The problem is when we get to the broader U.S. Navy and the Department of the Navy General Fund and Working Capital Fund, it's just at a fundamentally different scale. The Marines have about $40 billion of capital assets. The U.S. Navy has $800 billion of capital assets. We cannot do it by a substantive audit. We have to have controls in place, which means everybody following the process and everybody, particularly the independent auditors, having confidence that they can guarantee it across ways. That's what we're staring at. That still sounds like a bunch of accounting. The auditors, of course, think the accounting is important. I, the financial manager, think the accounting is important. But it only gets interesting when we manage to make that accounting relevant to actual outcomes.
So understanding all of that, is it possible to put a timeline on this? And what are the next, and it strikes me the Marine Corps is an important building block on this. What are the other building blocks that you expect to see in between where you are today and a clean audit opinion for the entire Navy at some future date?
I love this conversation. I love how we've gotten to focus on the positive, including boasting about the Marine Corps. But it turns out that's not the only thing in motion. In the last National Defense Authorization Act, Congress took yet another step of being impatient with the Department of Defense and have now mandated that it will be 2028 when we have to turn in a clean opinion. The Department of the Navy has had 2028 as our goal for a number of years now. We have a plausible roadmap to get there, and taking the victory of the Marine Corps gives us hope, but now we need to go do all of that work to move across the functional stovepipes and start tying it together. But more and more people realize that. I just am very taken by the leadership you see from the top of the Navy, both my secretary, from the CNO, from the Vice Chief of Naval Operations. They see what it is and they can watch the example of the Marine Corps, and I am a great deal of confidence we will see progress in the next couple of years.
We have 30 seconds left. What are the blocks that I can look for between now and that clean audit opinion to say, yep, Russ was right, they're on track?
The most important one is, when do you start seeing DoD-wide policy change that favors an audit over one of those functional stovepipes? That by itself is a win. I think you will see some of those, and I think those are things to point out that, yes, we're on the right path.
It's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time today.
Appreciate it.
You can read more about the Navy's audit journey on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The Defense Department's headed for a new phase in its Zero Trust effort. Les Call, the director of the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office at DoD, will tell you about it exclusively on the FedGov Today podcast, out this coming Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts, and always on demand at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the customer experience edge is coming from AI. FedGov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.
Civilian federal service follows countless paths, each road unique, each journey distinct. WEPA has covered them all since 1943, from the demands of the job and accomplishments at work, to the joys of the family and milestones at home, from inside the office to beyond the Beltway. Group Term Life Insurance from WEPA has the coverage and benefits to protect you and your loved ones, wherever Fed life leads. WEPA, for Feds, by Feds.
Welcome back. The General Services Administration's planning a training series for federal employees on artificial intelligence. GSA's AI Community of Practice will lead the training. The COP says it's, quote, instrumental in guiding the practical implementation of responsible AI within the federal government. Paul Dommel is a partner in the Federal Tax and Finance Consulting Practice at IBM. Paul, thanks very much for joining me. How are you seeing artificial intelligence being used across agencies to help with customer experience, to help with some of the other tasks that agencies are up against?
Yeah, so we see it used in three key areas. Support for interaction with citizens and taxpayers. We see it being used to improve processes that are mission-driven, and we see it being used in back office, so improving finance, improving HR, and improving even things like IT optimization.
Teresa talked a few minutes ago about examining business processes. How do you see agencies doing that? How do you see them successfully analyzing the things that they're doing to determine which technologies will help them and which tasks they can maybe streamline or eliminate? So actually, interestingly, earlier this year we had a couple of roundtables. It was kicked off by the Commissioner of the IRS, Commissioner Werfel, and we involved tax agencies from 8 or 10 countries around the world, private sector, and some think tanks. We really sort of worked through the process of, hey, how does this AI affect taxpayers? How does it affect your mission processes of collecting taxes? And so we use that to really kind of ferret out what are some of the real opportunities in government. Mm-hmm. And the things that we came up with were pretty interesting. So on the taxpayer services side, it's things like, you know, the ability to be 24/7, to respond to questions, you know, AI and chatbots, the ability to do a better job with call center. Some really interesting other things came up also, of using generative AI to help to create really fast educational materials, particularly as we move to kind of a world where it's an increasing number of small businesses and a gig economy where people need help thinking about taxes in an entirely new way. Mm-hmm. What are the opportunities that you see that maybe are underutilized, where AI could help and agencies haven't maybe maximized its potential yet?
So we're doing a project with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and it's the largest intelligent automation project program in government. And it basically takes all the forms that are coming into the mailroom, and it is a process that at the VA took about 30 days to get from when the document arrived to when it got to a point where somebody could look at it and make a decision. We took that process using a combination of AI and intelligent automation from 30 days to 30 minutes. And in the process, took about 900 out of 1,000 people out of that touching a paper process, mm-hmm. put them into different roles where they're helping to faster decide on the outcomes of cases, So it's an awesome opportunity to really improve citizen service and do better for the agency as well.
And it sounds like it's really getting at the core of what the President's management agenda talks about moving employees from lower value to higher value work.
Absolutely, and the way that we can do that is by empowering them with tools that they use. Like AI isn't about replacing people, it's about giving them tools to be able to do their job better. And in doing that, we can advance them into better roles that have higher value to citizens and taxpayers.
We have about 30 seconds left, Paul. How do you advise agencies to make sure that they're doing the things that they want to do and accomplishing what they want to accomplish, measuring success, I guess?
Well, all of this starts from what are my mission objectives, where do I have performance challenges, and what are the opportunities to improve to meet those challenges. And if we can keep it close to how does it improve citizen service, how does it improve processes, how does it reduce costs, we can keep people on target.
What should agencies be doing now to prepare for some of these things that they might need to do 6 months, a year, 2 years in the future?
So it's a really good question. There's a huge trust gap in government, and it's getting larger. During COVID, we saw the trust in government, and it's not just government, but large institutions in general fall. In the last several months, we've seen that continue to fall. And what I see is to restore trust in government, focusing on the interactions that we have with government, that you and I directly have with government, is where you start to rebuild trust, where you're not for hours on a call waiting for an answer. You get the answers to the questions that you want quickly. And I think that's an important part of focusing and restoring trust in government.
Paul, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time today.
It was really fun. Thank you.
You can read more about AI across the federal government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, Phase 3 getting underway for DHS's procurement team. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Recruiting of the workforce, it's such a diverse group. It's a much more diverse group. It was easier. The message could be far simpler, 30, 40 years ago. But now when you look at the workforce and the wide range of people that can serve in those 100,000 jobs that are needed, you need the 25-year-olds, you need the wisdom of the retired veterans that are coming back to support. But then you also want folks that really can go in for the long haul and really see and have grown up in that culture and really can bring and really embrace that culture. So you need all kinds of that variety of people, and the recruiting strategy is tough because it can't be a one-size-fits-all. It really has to be pretty diverse.
Welcome back. The Department of Homeland Security's Procurement Innovation Lab is entering Phase 3 of its life cycle. One of the PIL's leaders says this phase will have a heavy emphasis on use cases. Scott Simpson is Digital Transformation Lead at the PIL. Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. What use cases are you looking at in this phase of your development?
So in the first few phases of the PIL, we had a lot of emphasis on individual procurements. As we move forward, we're looking more on the emphasis on the procurement professionals as a whole and how we change their cultural mindset. Because for a long time, we've had this cultural mindset of risk avoidance. I don't want to do anything that's risky. And instead of risk avoidance, we want to go to risk management. And that is a wholesale change in the way that the acquisition workforce has been thinking for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's not done on an individual case-by-case basis. It's done as a whole through everyday on-the-job training, everyday continuous training, and from the start when you're training your new folks that come on board. And so that's where we're kind of taking a look at that phase 3 and what that's going to look like.
When you go through these use cases and you go back to folks and say, okay, this is what happened, and how much of that change is just reinforcing, see, this didn't turn out so bad. This turned out okay, even though we took this risk. Is that an important element of what you're doing?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a great element of it. So after every team that we coach, we get feedback. And we don't just get feedback by sending out a survey. We actually talk to the folks that were involved in the procurement, and we find out what was effective, what was ineffective. And then we have kind of a retrospective with the team where we talk about that. And it's kind of like the government's debrief, for lack of a better word, right? And it is a great learning opportunity. And I would say 90% of the feedback we give is, hey, you can do this, lean forward into this. And there's only maybe 5 or 10% that's, hey, we need to adjust this a little bit. But there is a lot. And that can really boost somebody's confidence. Because when teams come to the Procurement Innovation Lab and they want to try something new, there's a lot of hesitancy there. And so they might want to try just one thing that they're really passionate about. But after they get that confidence there from that one thing, they are off to the races and they're just running to try something new again.
You said you get feedback on what was effective and what wasn't. Are there common themes among what people tell you was effective and wasn't, or does it differ depending on the types of procurement or the people involved and so on?
You know, one of the most common themes that I get is, especially when I'm talking to a company that bid or quoted on the work, the most common theme I get is, thanks so much for talking to us afterwards. They are so just enheartened by having someone listen to how the process went, because we haven't taken the time to do that before. We've given them lots of feedback, but we've never asked them for their feedback. And so there's a whole lot of positivity around that, and I think that positivity is really great for building a new culture again, where we have a relationship with the other side. We've got a pretty good relationships among ourselves with our program managers and our contracting officers and everyone else, but when we get to that other side and the companies that we work with every day that are really helping us to meet our government mission, that relationship's been a little broken, as we're trying to fix it a little bit. You
wrote recently about some of the ways that you define success in the transformation realm. Consult the end user, plan with the end in mind, use the question, what do you hope to accomplish today? What does that look like from the perspective of the people that you're working with inside the PIL and inside the procurement community more broadly in DHS?
Yeah, and so that starts with what we call a brainstorming session. It's where everyone gets together, and that's a really important piece, that it's not just a couple of people, it's as many people as possible, that way everyone's on the same page. And we talk to them about, what are you looking to buy? What's your goal here? I love to ask, what are your hopes and what are your fears? Because that really sets the tone for how their procurement is going to go. Maybe they're really hopeful that, like your previous guest was talking about, they can use a generative AI or something like that to speed something up. But maybe they're fearful that they're going to get a lot of quotes or a lot of proposals and that they're going to be evaluating for a long time. Those really lean into how we coach the team and how we begin to talk to them about that cultural change that is ongoing even as we're having that brainstorming. Because for so long, you know, someone would slide a piece of paper across my desk, that would be my purchase request, and I'd get to work on it, and maybe later on I'd call them and say, hey, it's done. Whoa, it's done. You never even talked to me. But we want to start changing that, so we're building relationships. And it's kind of funny that, you know, here we are in the 21st century, and we're talking about building relationships with people after we had this great conversation about, you know, building the next generation of AI.
What does the follow-on process look like? How does it work 6 months, 8 months, a year out, where you go back and say, okay, we gave you this coaching, you're now equipped with these tools, let's see how folks did it actually using them? Yeah,
it's a great question. So from a data perspective, 1 year out, we always track how well is the performance going. Because we want to know, not just whether we met your expectations at the procurement process and how fast you were awarded, whatever else. We want to know, how's the performance of the contract going? So 1 year out, we do a brief survey to find out how it's going. But a lot of our information gathering is a lot more informal. A lot of the people we talk to, they become part of our network. And so every second Wednesday of the month, we have what's called the Procurement Innovation Neighborhood. And that's an opportunity kind of for our alumni to come back to the office with us and kind of tell us, how's it going? And we get to hear from them. Oh, well, this was the impact. And we see some really interesting things, and we have a lot of really great discussions. And the other thing that it's doing is that it's keeping them within the family of that learning mindset. So at the Procurement Innovation Neighborhood, we're not just kind of gabbing, we're also sharing learning, because getting into that learning zone is really critical to how you perform. If we are just in the performance zone and we're just kind of doing our jobs, our performance will stay flat. But if we can, even once a month, once a week, step into the learning zone, that's when we see our performance start to go up. So we want to keep people in that learning zone, get them back in that learning zone, so that they have a learning culture, not just one of, hey, here's the paperwork, I got to do it.
We have less than 30 seconds left, Scott. Is there a way to measure that learning culture? Is there a way to know it's working the way we want it to?
Yeah, every year we do what's called the Procurement Culture Survey, the PCS. That goes out to the DHS acquisition workforce, and we measure innovation, we measure learning, we measure culture, and we measure mission to find out whether what we're doing is having an effect. And to the extent that we've had over the last 9 years, we do see a positive trend in going up in learning and going up in innovation.
Scott, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time. You can read more about digital transformation at DHS on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
I think with that staggering amount of open source data, the questions that can now be answered or the insights that can be derived is also growing. And as we get our hands around that data, I think government agencies are learning more and more that we can learn more about what's going on in our world from using that data. Let me give you an example. So recently there was an evacuation in Sudan where multiple government agencies had differing views on what was going on the ground, and therefore it was difficult to make decisions on what to do next. By leveraging not just social media, but pictures, images, video, news report, audio coming out of that event, government agencies are then able to look back, get a full view of the events on the ground, and then decision makers can take the actions they need to make sure that people are safe.
Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, the Women's Center's 50th anniversary gala is coming Saturday, October 26th at the Ritz-Carlton in Tysons. The Women's Center makes mental health services accessible and affordable for all community members. The Black Tie Gala benefits all the work the Women's Center does. You can learn more about it and register at thewomenscenter.org. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. You'll learn about the Justice Department's user experience efforts from the CIO there, Melinda Rogers, and the FITARA cyber success at the Education Department from their Chief Information Security Officer, Stephen Hernandez. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great week.